Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the Millennium Pod, a Star Wars podcast by me, Ari, at ari.in.space on TikTok and at the Millennium Pod, all one word, on Instagram. This week, I am once again joined by a great friend whom I've also met on the internet, on TikTok. Why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, let us know where we can find you on social media, and then maybe give us a little spiel about why you love Star Wars, because this is a Star Wars podcast.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm at Stardust M on TikTok. God, I love Star Wars for so many reasons that I'm failing to think of right now. But I became a Star Wars fan after I saw The Force Awakens in 2015 in theaters. And I remember just thinking like, oh, this is really cool. Like, actually, there is something to this. Like, people have been talking about this for years and never really been on it. But like, I think there might be something to this. And I think the world is so interesting, and I love so many of the characters, and I love so many of the themes of like hope and trust and friendship and found family, especially. Like, I love that. I love all of the relationships in Star Wars. There's so many like romantic relationships that I love and think are so cute, and I don't know, I just like love them so much. I love so many of like the female characters. When I think of like strong, interesting female characters that I really like, my mind always goes to like Rey and Jin and Leia, who I think are just so amazing. And it makes me so happy to think like there are little girls out there who get to see these movies and have those women as role models.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. It's interesting. And I didn't actually know that you were a recent Star Wars fan-ish. I guess The Force Awakens has been out for like 6 years now, but I'm the same way. I wasn't really a Star Wars fan until The Force Awakens. I watched like the first 5 movies. We skipped The Phantom Menace, which is a whole topic of discussion. But watched them before The Force Awakens and was like, oh yeah, these are pretty good. And then same, like watched The Force Awakens and was like, whoa, this is so cool. And like, again, I agree. I love Rey. I think that really solidified it for me, because it was just like, wow, this is a huge franchise and they gave a girl a leading role. It's so cool. So yeah, I'm really glad to hear that we're similar in that respect. That's pretty awesome. One thing I know that you also really like about Star Wars that not all Star Wars fans like, and is the topic of discussion for this podcast, is the film Solo. Now, I really like this movie. However, I did not watch it until I think it was last summer, because of course everybody review bombed it, because people were mad at Disney, I guess, for The Last Jedi. And so I was like, oh, I guess I don't need to watch that movie, which is a big regret. And so for anybody who's listened to my The Phantom Menace, Why It's a Good Movie podcast, which was episode 1, this is going to be very similar. Why this movie is actually worth watching, unlike what the naysayers say. And I mean, for me, I just don't understand why people, even if you don't particularly enjoy how it fits into, the Skywalker saga, which, I mean, it's not supposed to, it's a side story. I don't understand how people can't like it. I mean, it's crime in space. Like, I don't know. How do you feel about it?
I mean, I love a good heist movie. So this is like, I saw this movie in theaters like twice opening weekend.
That's
and I was
awesome.
like, this is just, it's so fun.
Yeah.
It's so fun. And it's the first time I remember really liking Han as a character. Before, I just felt like I was like, oh, like he's cool and he's there, but like I remember this movie, I was like, oh no, like I think he's really interesting, and I really like what this is adding to this like suave smuggler guy in the original trilogy. And yeah, I think it's fun. I love that it is a story that focuses on non-Force users. I think there's so much focus, especially in like this era of the Empire, on either Jedi who survive Order 66 or Jedi who are coming into this time and culture where the Jedi have been erased. But to have it focused on like a non-Force user and how they're navigating this world is so interesting to me. And as we see too, like the formations of the rebellion a little bit in this, and I personally, like, I love the rebellion. It's my favorite thing about Star Wars, and this is also my favorite time period. So the fact that like we get more information on this like space between like the ending of Revenge of the Sith and the original trilogy is so interesting to me. I also think this is a really great cast.
Absolutely.
Like besides like they went with like a newer one for Han Solo, but then the rest of the cast too is just so amazing. I've loved like Woody Harrelson
Yes,
because
yes,
of the Hunger Games, like
yes.
Haymitch. Like whenever I see him, I'm just like, it's Woody. It's my boy Woody.
Yeah.
Like, and like who doesn't love Amelia Clarke and Donald Glover? Like,
Right? Yeah,
they're
no.
incredible.
The cast is absolutely perfect. And I think Alden was an excellent Han. I think like I really do. Obviously Harrison's Han is iconic, right? But I
Mhm.
think he had really big shoes to fill. Especially considering the fact that technically, he's not that much younger than he would have been in the rebellion. So like he should have looked pretty much the same. But he doesn't, which is totally fine. And I think he does such a good job of totally impersonating him. I mean, there's multiple times in the movie where he does, the classic Solo shrug, and it's excellent. But yeah, this podcast is obviously going to be very biased, which I didn't quite realize, because we are pretty much the same, I think. This time period is also my favorite. I just love everything about the rebellion, and especially like the beginnings of it. But again, like you said, I also enjoyed that this film is about, like you said, not a force user. And I find that with this movie, as well as Rogue One and some of the novels, I'm really enjoying how they're sort of showing the dark side of the Empire, like no pun intended, but like how actually evil and messed up it was. And also how people who were part of it didn't necessarily realize how bad it was, right? Because like you have people like Han, which we find out in Solo, who just joined so he could learn how to be a pilot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And get out and eventually go back to Corellia to save Kira. Like that was his motivation. And I think a lot of people were like that. And we don't get that in the original trilogy, right? In the original trilogy, it's just like the Empire is bad and that's it. And there's no like extra about how ruthless they were, which we see with like the slaves on Kessel, or the motivations for why people actually joined them, right? Because when you watch the original trilogy, it's really easy to be like, why would anybody want to join them? But like I feel like this movie, as well as some others, but especially in this movie, it shows like why you would want to join, and then how hard it would be to get out, right? Because like Han flunks out of the flight academy, right? And then he's just, I can't even remember the name of the planet, but he's traveling around the mud. Like he couldn't just leave. Like he got flunked out and then still forced to work. So I just find it so interesting. But that being said, I also just, as you also said, I agree. It made me like Han a lot more. I didn't dislike Han, and I don't dislike Han in the OT. However, I don't care about him in the original trilogy. Or I mean, I do more so now, but like Luke and Leia were, for me, the main part of that, and what I like the most about the original trilogy, character wise. But I find that this movie really shows Han's motivations and why he is the way he is in the original trilogy, which I always find interesting when we get more character backstory. But it makes him seem less like, for lack of a better word, a dick, because you see what he goes through, right, in Solo. So I don't know, I'm sure you have lots of thoughts about how Han's character is more fleshed out, and I would love to hear them.
Yeah, so I mean, one, I want to say, like, I also love Alden's portrayal of Han. I do feel like he does a really good job balancing, like, that classic Han that feels like Harrison, but also it not coming off as, like, him just doing a Harrison Ford impression.
Yes.
I think he definitely brings his own energy to the character, which is great because, like, I think I don't want to say, like, I think what people sometimes forget is, like, Han wasn't always going to be this, like, cool smuggler guy. And I like that Solo really shows him as a little less sure of himself.
Yes.
He's starting to get his footing. He doesn't fully understand, like, what he's getting into or how to be who he wants to be. And I think it's interesting when we're looking at, like, him and, like, him watching, like, Tobias Beckett, and, like, you notice, like, then I like that they're, like, kind of giving these hints of, like, he modeled so much of who he was in the OT sort of off of him. Yes. With it, from, like, the little motions of the handgun twirl, but even to, like, I think this more untrusting, aloof attitude. I also love that this really establishes how far Han is willing to go for the people he loves.
Absolutely, yeah.
that is so important. And I think it really, to me, makes what he does for Ben, Kylo, how he is like willing to go so far to try to bring him back to the light, when you then remember like what he did for what he wanted to do for Kira, how he spent all of those years trying to get back to her, how when they were reunited he was constantly trying to think of like, how can we stay together, because like that's what Han wants. I think he wants people. I think as much as in the OT it seems like he doesn't want to be, I think it's because he's protecting himself, because the last person that he truthfully trusted and opened himself up to was Kira, who left him.
Yeah.
And I think that also makes him and Leia's relationship really sweet, in this idea that like Han is opening himself back up again to love and to a family and to a future with someone who is not Chewy. And I think that's really I think that's really beautiful. I don't know, and I like that you still get kind of that classic Han Solo cockiness, that kind of thinking on his feet, trying to do stuff, but like he's not always perfect. Like I couldn't think of like I thought of like how many moments in this movie reminded me of that one scene in A New Hope where he's on the intercom and he's like trying to improv, but he's not great at it. And how that kind of reminded me of like when he's getting the coaxium in the mines and he was like, don't improv. And then he cannot improv at all. Like, he's so bad at it. And it was that nice little like through character detail that I love. I just like, I can't feel like I gush about this betrayal. And I know so many people don't really love it that much, but I think he did a great job. And I think that you can really tell that I think Alden cared about wanting to do good by this character.
Yeah. No, yeah, I definitely agree. I think at the root of it, we can really see what drives Han as a character. And I mean, we do see it a bit in the original trilogy, but it's definitely solidified in Solo that he's very driven by like passion and loyalty for the people he cares about. And I really like what you said about his and Leia's relationship and how he opens up more. And again, and to me, I never particularly liked Han and Leia's relationship in the original trilogy. Like, again, I didn't dislike it, but it just, of all the Star Wars romances, it just was, it's like the most normal, like, romance you see, it's like the cocky guy with like the smart girl, like it's in every high school teen movie, right? And so I just wasn't that impressed by it. However, after, seeing that character development with him and his past relationships with Kira, I definitely appreciate him and Leia's relationship so much more now, because it means so much more to me anyway, because it's like, he was hurt, he was burned in the past, but he didn't let that, I mean, at points, he's guarded, right? But ultimately he didn't let that dictate his life and make him go downhill, I guess, or become an angry old man. So I find that really interesting, and I really appreciate it.
Because there was like the Val quote where she's like, everyone needs someone, even like this like she's referring to her and Tobias, and even this like cranky old man, and I couldn't help but think how much I felt like that reflected a little bit older Han and Leia, that like everyone needs someone, even cranky old smuggler Han. I guess he's not cranky old Ben, but
I mean he's cranky for sure. I think like whoever wrote this film, I don't know who it was, but they did a really good job of like having tons of like callbacks to like different parts of Star Wars and different parts. And I feel like if people give it a chance, it's actually like, the whole point of this is to convince people it's a good movie.
I really think not enough people have rewatched this movie. I think this with both of the standalone Star Wars movies. I was like, I feel like so many people saw them like once in theaters and was like, that was okay. But I'm like, I really could not recommend more like giving these movies like another watch, because I think you will see that they are very good.
I think it's partly too like Disney pumped out 5 movies in the span of 5 years, and so I feel like that may have had something to do with it as well. It was just like almost too much for people, but yeah, definitely people need to have a rewatch of both Solo and Rogue One, because they're both honestly such good movies, and I love them both shamelessly. Rogue One at least isn't as hated as Solo. I don't even know if Solo's necessarily hated. I don't know. I just feel like the timing of Solo especially was really bad, because it came out like less than 6 months after The Last Jedi, which of course is a huge point of contention for Star Wars fans. So
and it was always like, it's always facing an uphill battle when you're whole idea is we're gonna do a different version of a character that you already know and love, and also we just kill this character.
Oh, yeah.
So now he's like coming back. Like I feel like it was always kind of an uphill battle, and I don't think that like to like the issue, like the whole thing with the then switching directors and stuff necessarily helped the vote of confidence on this movie from fans, but
yeah,
I still think I think bare minimum, it is at least a very fun, enjoyable movie.
Exactly. I totally agree. Like, even if you don't want to like it, like there's good action sequences. I mean, and like you said, the cast is incredible. Like,
if you're looking for non-lightsaber based action sequences,
I feel like
also
Star Wars, yes.
That are also Star Wars, yeah. These are like pretty great. Like the Kessel Run scene is so fun, and it's just so like action packed and incredible, and you know that they're gonna make it out, but it's so fun watching them figure it out.
Yeah, and just like the stress, I don't know, I was stressed, especially when, you know, they inject the coaxium and then it takes a second for it to kick in. I mean, obviously I knew it was gonna be fine, but I was still watching it for the first time. I was like, oh no, they're gonna get sucked into that gravity well. I also really, really appreciate, as I'm a physics and chemistry student, and George, I'm sorry, I love you, but the line in A New Hope when Khan says he made the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs just like makes my science brain want to jump out a window, because a parsec is not a unit of like speed or time, which is what would be referred to there. It's a unit of distance, and it just like, so I appreciate Solo to no end for the fact that they finally came up with some way that, you know, actually makes a decent amount of sense as to what that means, because it frustrates me to no end every time I watch A New Hope, which is probably either, it's like in my top 3, so I watch it a good amount. Every time I'm like, George. But I do, it's actually quite interesting, the whole Kessel Run plotline, and especially when they bring it up again in The Force Awakens when Rey is like, oh, you're the pilot that made the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. I'm like, oh, yes, again, callbacks, and I just appreciate it so much.
I feel like you couldn't do a Han Solo movie without that. Like it's like that is so iconic and so everything that like you can't have it without the Kessel Run.
I know, it's just perfect. And even as you were saying, like the actual, when they're actually on Kessel, it's just everything about that whole scene is so on brand for Han. It's so on brand for Lando. It's just like, it's just perfect. I mean, I love that we get to see Han and Lando, not Han and Lando, their relationship, like when they first met, because like they're an iconic duo, and I mean, it's interesting to see how, you know, they've always kind of been contentious with each other, but ultimately will have each other's back in the end. And I mean, Donald Glover did an excellent job. I really hope. I don't know if it's been confirmed, but there's been like a ton of rumors that he's going to be Lando in the Lando show, which would make sense. That better be true, because
I've always wanted like the idea of him, like Billy D narrating a young Lando's like journeys. It's like the Calrissian Chronicles like in this one, but it's Billy D doing it, and then it's Lando. I love Han and Lando in this film so much. I love one of my favorite interactions. That is one of my favorite like parallels in Star Wars is the "I hate you, I know" to Han and Leia's "I love you, I know." I just think that's like so perfect for their friendship, and for Han's. I like how they like establish that that's almost like a thing that Han does.
Yeah,
Han is a king. He's very aware of how people feel about him. Intuition. Love that.
Yeah,
love that. And I think Donald Glover he's so fun in this movie, and you can't dislike Lando, and I think Donald Glover absolutely nails it too. And I like how once again we always see that there is this like kind of Han is always a little bit not as good as like Lando almost, and that's like a consistent thing in their relationship, and I like that. And I like the L3 a lot too. I hope
me
that
too.
They do a Lando show, depending on when it takes place. Like I'd love to see more of L3. I think her and Lando have such a funny like dynamic. Yeah. And I think that L3 is such a fun like just droid in Star Wars. Like I think that's another thing I think the solo or the standalone movies did really well. The droid characters.
Oh yeah.
They're funny, they're sassy, they're full of a little bit of violence, and
yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, they got like slight Chopper vibes. They're not like quite war criminals, but like sort of. And then they got the sass, and it's just like so good. And it's funny because both L3 and K2 are like, I'll call them like humanoid looking droids, right? They're not like astromechs. And it's so funny because like the only other human-ish droid we have is C-3PO, and they're just not even close to the same. And it's so good. It's so
L3 and K2SO would bully C-3PO.
Absolutely. You know what I want? I just want a movie where it's like just purely the droids, all of them. I know it wouldn't make sense. It doesn't have to be canon. I just want it. Like
I just want the chaos. I think I've made a TikTok that I just want the chaos of L3, K2, and Chopper.
Oh my goodness, that would be incredible.
Together, just like that chaos energy in one space. And then the trick is each one of their like Cassian, Lando, and Hera all told them that they were in charge.
That would be so good. Lucasfilm, please hire her so we can have this. Like, oh my gosh, that would be so funny.
Now I write a fanfic, but it's just about Chopper L3 and K2SO interacting.
Honestly, I would be so down. If I could write, I would write Chopper K2 C-3PO or Chopper K2 L3 fanfic. You know what? Throw C-3PO in there too, because it would just be so funny, him trying to like keep order.
They'd bully him.
They would bully him so bad. And he would just be like, oh, I'm made to suffer. It'd be so good. Oh my goodness. Anyway, as a side note, are you wearing Han Solo earrings?
I am.
Oh, that is incredible.
The wonderful Bedazzler on TikTok.
Oh, yes.
Etsy shop, Far Far Away Factory. I love them, and they get bonus points because the brown suede jacket that Han wears in this movie is by and far my favorite Han Solo look. I think it is absolutely incredible, and I honestly want to own that jacket really badly. I have been searching on Etsy to see if I can find a good one because I'm obsessed with it. I love it so much.
It is an incredible, it's a good outfit, you know, like he just looks good in this movie. I'm sorry, I'm just shameless. He looks great.
All them
12 out of 10.
He doesn't get enough credit. He's a top tier Star Wars man. That's what I'm saying.
You know what? He's never on any of those like lists, and you know what? He deserves to be. If I knew how to make TikTok audios, I would make one for him. But
yeah, like him and the power of him and Donald Glover together.
So good. It's so good. Anyway, back to our pitch about why this movie is great. Another reason is, of course, we get to meet Chewie and how he meets Han, and it's so good. I don't know if that was ever like in like a book or something somewhere, but I had no idea that was a thing, that they like broke out of Imperial prison together, which honestly is so on brand. Like, and especially the fact that Han waited until the last possible second to start speaking Wookiee to get Chewbacca to not kill him. I'm like, when I first watched that the very first time, I was like, sir, you know, you could have started with that. Like, hello. But then breaking out, and even them trying to go different directions and Chewie dragging him along. It's just, I just love that scene. It's so funny. And
so good.
When Han is like, I have friends, and Chewie just like gives him a look that's like, no, you don't.
No.
Like, I wonder if he knew in that moment that he was getting into a lifetime of just, well, I guess less than a lifetime because he's already 190, but like a human lifetime worth of troubles with Han.
Yeah, it's less, Chewie is less Han's like pet than Han is Chewie's. Like, Han is basically Chewie's dog.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, Chewie is the master in this relationship. I do not care about whatever life debt he supposedly has. No, Han is the dog.
I love that though. I love how we have that moment where Han says Chewie's looking for his like clan, his family, and I love that like it's this thing where like he finds it with Han, and like they really are. They do stick together. Like Chewie stands by Han until quite literally the last moment.
Yeah.
And that is like, it's so nice to see that and like have that kind of like background of like besides the life debt, like yeah, the idea that like Chewie, like Han, is also looking for a place to belong and people to belong with, and they find that in each other. And even when they have like no one else, they always have each other. And I like that, and I like how this movie shows us the start of their friendship and also shows us the beginning of like the great banter and
yeah
and moments that we've grown so used to.
It's just so entertaining, and I love when Chewbacca tells Han his name, and Chewbacca's not that hard, like it's 3 syllables, and Han's like, oh, that's too hard for me, I'm gonna need to come up with a nickname. So I'm just like, oh, bless your sweetheart. So good. Speaking of names, actually, I wanted to mention this when we were actually talking about Han, but it's fine. I really like how we learn, like how we get to know his name. I know a lot of people have been like, that's so like anticlimactic, but I'm like, I think that's really cool. Like, especially when he says like, I don't have people, and ultimately like he ends up finding people, you know, found family is such a big thing in Star Wars. Like in the end, I just think that I like it. I like that it was so simple and just like didn't have any like significant meaning, because in a way that makes it more significant. I don't know.
Yeah, I really don't like mind that. I think some people have like an issue with it or bothered by it. I thought it was fine, and I think it's kind of fun and nice to know like just how much like little that name was at first, and then it kind of turns into something really like big when you know, Han becomes of course this like hero of the rebellion, and then even like there's such significance to like the, you know, Kylo Ren to Ben Solo thing. So I think that's really cool. I like it. It's like, you know, Han really makes like his name this like symbol and like kind of it's an icon in its own right, and I think it's fun, especially in a story where like we know that like names have such meaning, that like Han was sort of just given this name, but then you could say that like he really made it into something.
Yeah, he kind of like he took it to be his own thing. Like he could have just, you know, ditched it or whatever, but he fully embraced it, which I think is really, really cool. And it's neat because, you know, as much as he's like, oh, I don't have anybody, I'm solo, right? Like I said, he kind of comes full circle in a way, and he ends up not being alone really, which is kind of cool. We should definitely talk about Kira because first of all, amazing. Second of all, we don't get a lot of, as much as, you know, I said previously, I was so excited to see like Leia lead, right? I was absolutely, but like the excitement probably came from the fact that there's not a lot of lead females in A, Star Wars, and B, just like life in general. Like Star Wars actually is probably one of the better franchises for lead female, and like mostly well-written female, if we don't include Padme in Revenge of the Sith. Like I think Star Wars does a pretty decent job. I just wish there was more than, you know, one per trilogy.
Yeah, and more than just like and a single like white woman too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm hoping that we get a lot more representation soon. But yeah, no, I think Kira's really a very interesting character because she kind of has all of the presence, I'll say, of like Leia, and is like commanding in that way, but also yet soft. But her goals and her like intentions are completely different, and I think that's really interesting, because they could have easily just written her as like a carbon copy of Leia and called it a day, but they didn't, and I appreciate that because not all women are carbon copies of each other. But also, again, like having the 2 different relationships, especially with Han, shows such a difference and develops his character differently. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate that she's not, you know, a damsel in distress ever, which is pretty great.
No. Yeah, I mean, she's the one that kills Dryden in the end. Like, she is ultimately, and chooses sort of her own path, I guess, even if it is to go serve under Maul, which is which I would love to see more of, actually. I really hope that they bring Kira back in something, because I'd love to see like what she came when she became the like leader of Crimson Dawn. Like whether that is just they're gonna tell us like Maul killed her or like or she lived this whole life, because theoretically by like the rise of Skywalker she could still be alive because she would be about Han's age.
Yeah, that's true.
We know, so she could, I don't know, still be kicking somewhere. But also I mean, she could show up in Lando depending on when that takes place and if they choose to do Donald Glover for Lando. And I think people have mentioned her possibly being in Book of Boba, because that is seemingly if Boba has taken over like this kind of crime group, if Kira is still running Crimson Dawn somewhere, like I'd love to see that. I also think Kira's such an interesting character because she's we have a lot of these female characters who are very like hopeful and have a lot of belief and faith. And what I like so much about her, and also Jin, but like, is that she doesn't feel like she can really afford that. Like as much as Han has held on to this like belief and this hope that he will see Kira again one day, they will be reunited, I think Kira was just like, I can't think like that. Like I can't survive if I just sit here thinking that Han might come back for me one day. And I think that's really interesting, especially in a story that is so focused on hope, that we have this character that is like, it's just something that I can't afford. I need to think of survival first and foremost. And I need to think of how am I going to get out of this situation and get to a place where I am better off and safer and protected. Because like, that's what she says. She's like, at the beginning, she says like, oh, I don't want to be kicked around. And I think you can see that in like, she's sort of probably climbed up the ladder in Crimson Dawn, you know, as this protection. She learns that martial arts thing as like protection. She wants to be her own sort of like, I guess, protector. Like you said, she's not a damsel in distress. She wants to be competent. And yeah, she has goals and aspirations. And I think that's the thing too, is like when you really look at Han and Kira, I think it's a little bit of a situation of two people who outgrew each other. I think Kira definitely outgrew Han in this realization that like, yeah, she wanted different things. I don't know if she wanted to be the person that was just riding around with Han Solo in a plane or in a ship being a smuggler. Like, I mean, like, not to like, I'm not saying that you very, very girl boss of her.
Very girl boss.
Very girl boss. But I think she's interesting. And I also think it's interesting to have like sort of another female character, at least in the live action. I think we don't see a lot that has like this more ambiguous moral code where like he's definitely not on the good side. Like and even I think she realizes that when she tells Han like, you're one of the good guys, and I think in that she is saying, you are one of the good guys, I am not. I am not the good guy in this story. And I think it's very interesting, and I would love to get more on her character. I think they could do interesting stuff with her, even if they wanted to go more the route of like making her explicitly the villain, especially after we had grown sort of attached and like liked her, because like she is a likable character. She's very interesting. In some ways she's very sweet, but I also think she uses like her sweetness to sort of like lure people in, to be like, I'm so nice and kind, and then she'll like kill you.
You know, I think she could be, sorry, go ahead.
She'll betray you. She'll just ride off in that ship.
Ship and just buy. I think she could be a very compelling villain. I would actually like super love that. I think it'd be really cool. I definitely want to see more of her. And I also like, I don't know if they had a Solo sequel or something planned and then they scrapped it because there's like nothing about it that's being said, but like the ending is very like not an ending.
It's very ambiguous, because I think like the thing is, you tie up the loose endings with like all of the new characters. Like Beckett is dead, everyone in the crew
dead.
is dead, and then the three characters we know have to be alive are alive. But then Kira just like rides off in this ship, and you're like, like, and like Han never went back for her, or like, because I know why, like he probably was like, oh, clearly that's her saying she doesn't want to be, but like I don't. Well, it's interesting too to consider like if Han is involved in like Jabba's stuff, like if he is basically involved in some of this crime stuff, like that he never ran into her or people from Crimson Dawn again.
Yeah, honestly, I would like a movie because I like these like types of like crime films, especially when they're like Star Wars, so they're not like excessively bloody and violent. And I think it would be such a cool movie if we had like Han, you know, working for Jabba, and then somehow there's like some conflict between the Hutts and Crimson Dawn, or maybe even like we could throw the Pikes in there too. Like, let's just get all the crime syndicates in there, because I feel like if they had just had Han leave and then Kira just leave, like that would be an okay ending. But it's the fact that they had Kira talking to Maul, and like, and for people who haven't seen like the Clone Wars or Rebels, who would have had no idea, like I hadn't seen Clone Wars or Rebels, and I wasn't really on like the Star Wars internet really, so like I didn't know. I had no idea Maul was still alive, and then I saw him and I was like, what? And so I feel like
that was the first time I ever saw Maul, technically, because I hadn't watched the prequels. Like I knew he was a character, but I'd never watched the prequels, so I was just like, he showed up and I was like, that's a guy from Star Wars for sure. I didn't really understand like the significance of him. Yeah, and how like a lot of people, if they didn't watch it, were like, he's not dead. And also like then there's that whole thing with him to fill in of like him going from leading like Crimson Dawn and all these syndicates to then where we see him in Rebels, where he's like all about that Sith holocron and getting Ezra to be his apprentice. Like, what was the jump there?
Yeah, no, I feel like a lot of people have been saying they want to see Maul in Kenobi, and I don't really, because I think Kenobi takes place after Rebels, right? So that wouldn't really make sense. Or does it take place before?
Before, yeah.
Oh, okay, so then it would be fine, but it would still be weird because it'd be like, I don't know. There's only so many times Maul and Kenobi can fight, you know, before what happens in Rebels happens. But I would like to see more of Maul, like you said, for that weird like time jump where, because like we see him at the end of Clone Wars, and I guess he's sort of been defeated. I know you haven't seen Clone Wars, but like anyway, he's sort of been defeated. But then he's told all of his like crime people like to go into hiding, and then next thing we see him, like you said, it's holocron and then Kenobi, and then that's it. And so I do think that we would benefit a lot from a movie or like a short run TV show of crime in Star Wars in the time of the Empire with Han and Kira and Maul and the Hutts. You know, we can see a young Jabba the Hutt. I'm just kidding. I'm sure he looks the same, but I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, people, I think one time I got a comment that was like, do you think Maul's gonna be an Andor? I was like,
oh my gosh, I hope not.
I was like, not to be like, but I was like, and then I was like, and then also watching Rebels, I was like, I definitely don't think so. But like, yeah, I would love that. And I also think that's like what's interesting about the potential of like, I don't know if we're getting a Solo too, but for Han or Kira to possibly show up in other stuff, like it would be cool if Han popped up maybe in an episode of Lando, have them kind of have another interaction to even more build on this sort of like slight hostility that we see in Empire. I think that is pretty much explained by like Lando not getting any of his cut and then Han taking his ship. But like, and I think Kira could be really interesting, even if she could just in dialogue fill in that gap about Maul of like, he gave this to me because he decided whatever, and like
he wanted to
she doesn't really know about like, she doesn't know about like Jedi stuff. It's just like he had some weird like stuff that he wanted to do. I don't know. Like he was just like, you can have this.
Be religious for a little bit or something. I don't know.
But I love plus I'd love to see I really think that Kira, Fennec Shand, and Boba would be a very powerful trio. I
feel like they might be too powerful. Like, could anyone stop them? I mean,
could anyone? I mean, I think that they would be fighting each other, but it'd be very powerful.
Oh my gosh, that would be so good. In an alternate Star Wars like that, I think there's like a Marvel show coming out that's like what if and like alternate timelines. Yes. We need one of those for Star Wars so we can just
what if Han and Kira had stayed together is an interesting one to consider. or if like I also think like, oh, what if like Han had gone with Efren Ness then, had decided that he wanted to join the rebellion then, and what a different path his life would have taken. Because I also don't really think we know what happens to her.
No, we
or
know.
Her gang.
So like, I feel like we need a sequel. We just need one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it's like really interesting because their setup is like one of the earlier rebel cells of like before we even had before Bail Organa and Mon Mothma merged theirs to this like big alliance, like then I know like during this time period, because like Bail had started his, we have Saw's partisans, and then we have like Efren Ness, and I'm sure others that I just like don't know, but it's like it's so interesting to think about too, like how different sort of each of their approaches are to like the rebellion. And like I think Saw like is definitely much more like confrontational, fighting the Empire, where I think like Efren Ness sort of based on her story has this much more like humanitarian approach, where I think she wants to help people first before like directly engaging in conflict with the Empire. And I think that's really interesting. Like I like this idea of like possibly like I don't know what it would be like. I think maybe like a book or something that would examine further these sort of different rebel cells before the rebellion became like the rebellion, like to examine and the leaders and their different approaches to stuff. And I would hope that they don't just like say no more Efren Ness, especially I think with the actresses success now with like Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I feel like Star Wars should be coming back around.
She's very like, good at that role.
Remember you want to come back?
No, I think that would be really cool, because I mean, like I said earlier, and you said as well, like this is like our favorite time period, so I would just love all the content of like, you know, 10 years before A New Hope and like onward. Like that would be so good. Even like right after Order 66, like those 20 years are so interesting.
They're so interesting.
Life sucked for most people, but some people had hope, and I just love that.
I think it's really interesting. I'm hoping maybe if anybody might, I don't know, pop up in Efren or in Andor, maybe Efren Ness could be interesting to see. But those guys, because I do know that I think the Solo novelization and like the epilogue, some of the coaxium they gave it to Saw. Okay. So like I'm like, oh, if that's a connection, then like, you know, all of these groups are suddenly becoming connected, and then I'm like, this like leads back to like, I'd be interested to see if, especially with, I'm sorry, I'm talking about Andor, like Andor being about the like formation of the rebellion, to once again go back to someone that we knew was in like an earlier rebel cell and see like what they've been doing, and like what like would she, if she was still alive and her group was still together, join like the Rebel Alliance, or would she decide to continue like Saw did as like their own group, because like maybe she had issues with the way the rebellion or like Mon Mothma was doing stuff, or maybe she thought it was good and joined. Like I'd be interested in that sort of idea.
I know. I feel like good movie aside, Solo definitely introduces a lot of very interesting possibilities for Star Wars going forward. I mean, I hope that they don't just kind of, you know, put Solo in a box and just ignore all the possibilities that have come from it, because I think there's like a lot. I mean, I understand that they might be waiting a little bit until, you know, the anger, whatever, dies down, but I don't know. I feel like there's so much.
I felt a little bad. Alden did that interview recently where he was like, oh, Han Solo is just not like really a big part of my life. And I'm like I understand, but like I love you, Alden. Please come back.
I don't blame him for trying to be like, staying away from this because people hated it, but he did such a good job.
He told like he like doesn't have like any social media, and like I don't think he has like a smartphone. And then after Solo, he literally just like took time off of acting, and it was only like very like 2020 in like that was like the first project he had done since Solo. And I thought that was interesting, and I also kind of I at least bare minimum appreciate that mentality of get that check and dip.
Get that
Star Wars money
and then leave and
And
go
then
away from Star Wars, because you know what, Star Wars has this trend of people hate it when it first comes out and then appreciate it later on. So like he can reappear in a few years and people will just worship the ground he walks on. But like,
by the time Lando comes out, like I feel like if he's just in like a little bit, people start, you see him, they go, oh, I remember him from Solo. They rewatch Solo. All of a sudden, Solo has a nice little renaissance.
Yeah, exactly. That would be so good.
My dream of, I just want like, because I also really, I'm sad that Solo did so poorly, like even box office wise.
Yeah.
Because it basically signified this big switch to them trying TV shows. Because Kenobi, like I remember originally was pitched as like a movie, because I remember they're like, oh, they're gonna do Solo and Kenobi and then like maybe like a Boba Fett movie or something. And now clearly we're seeing that
shows.
That's all TV shows, and I love the TV shows and I'm so excited for them, but I also really like the standalone movies, and so I'm excited to, I think we're going back to it maybe because it seems like you have like Rogue Squadrons and I think Acolyte, which seem to be standalones and not as like in the like Skywalker area. So I'm excited they're doing that, and I'm a little sad. That's why like I was like, part of me is like, hype up Solo so they know that people still want to see
I want a Solo sequel, and I want more standalone movies, because honestly I think they're great and they add a lot of depth to Star Wars. And
I think it's just so fun. It's such a big universe and you have so much that too, like I think what's really interesting is like you really do get to like kind of go outside the box a little bit more with like genre in both the TV shows and movies, but like clearly we see like, Rogue One is very much like a war movie, but then you have like Solo, which is like a heist movie, like a heist action movie, and The Mandalorian, which is a like a space western. So I like that too. What that provides is like this kind of opportunity for difference in genre, so I would love to see more of that. And I just I'm just a little, as much as I love many of the Skywalkers, I'm a little sick of seeing them everywhere and everything revolving around them. I'm like, I get you're important. This galaxy is very big though, so I think we can get like a couple more things.
That's why I've been really getting into like reading the High Republic, and I hadn't really read much Star Wars, but again, that's like a whole new era, 200 years before any Skywalker came onto the scene, and it's just like kind of nice. Like you said, I do love the Skywalkers and I love watching like all 9 movies. I love all of them. However, I do like that we're branching out, and it makes Star Wars continue to be relevant. Like it's just going to keep being relevant. I mean, I'm really excited for the Bad Batch, because it's going to be Star Wars cartoon, another one like Rebels, that isn't about the Skywalkers for the most part. I mean, I'm sure Vader will probably be in it, but that's it's gonna be good.
It's so fun, and that's what like Solo is. It's fun because it's I think it's a good balance of like character that you know and love, plus new characters, and plus no Jedi or like Force users, except for like that ball thing at the end. But like I also I like exploring like not Jedi or like Sith, and not having the Sith as the primary villain, not having the Jedi as the primary heroes. I think it's really interesting, and I think that it adds a lot to the world, because really the Jedi are kind of a small group of people, really. Only so many people can be Force sensitive and can be trained.
Exactly. They make it out like they're such a big thing, and I mean they are to an extent, but they're also not. There's so much, there's like a bajillion different planets. Every new Star Wars book I read, there's like 6 new planets. I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't keep track.
This one, they were like, I love every new Star Wars thing is like, here's just 5 different planets with names that you will never remember, but will pop up on every Star Wars trivia you take. So make sure you jot down at least a couple in your brain.
No, it's so good. But anyway, I guess the moral of this podcast to anybody who's still listening is watch Solo, enjoy Solo. As a side note, enjoy Rogue One too. Enjoy this extra Star Wars, and thank you all for listening. Please feel free to reach out to us on social media. But don't be mean. And I will tag Emily's stuff in the description so you can find her easily. And yeah, I hope everyone's having a great day, night, morning, evening, I don't know, whatever it is, wherever you are. And as always, may the force be with you.